Michigan Constitution of 1963, Article 9, Section 36. 6% of the proceeds of the tax on tobacco products shall be dedicated to improving the quality of health care of the residents of this state. Section 37. The Michigan Veterans Trust Fund is established within the Department of Treasury. All money in the fund established by 1946, PA 9, shall be transferred to the Michigan Veterans Trust Fund. The trust fund may additionally receive appropriations, money, or other things of value. The state treasurer shall direct investment of the fund as provided by law, and credit interest and earnings of the fund to the fund. Except for the state treasurer's actions authorized under this section, an expenditure or transfer of a trust fund asset, interest, or earnings may be made only upon the authorization of a majority of the members of the Michigan Veterans Trust Fund Board of Trustees. Section 38. The Michigan Veterans Trust Fund Board of Trustees is established and consists of veterans honorably discharged from the armed services and appointed by the governor as prescribed by law. Section 39. The Michigan Veterans Trust Fund Board of Trustees shall administer the Michigan Veterans Trust Fund. The Board of Trustees shall not authorize the expenditure or transfer of a trust fund asset, interest, or earnings unless the Board of Trustees determines in its discretion and by majority vote that the expenditure or transfer is for the benefit of veterans or their spouses or dependents. Section 40. The Mission Conservation and Recreation Legacy Fund is established. The State Treasurer shall direct the investment of the Legacy Fund. The State Treasurer shall establish within the Legacy Fund restricted accounts as authorized by this section, and may establish additional sub-accounts as authorized by law. The State Treasurer may receive gifts, grants, bequests, or assets from any source for deposit into a particular account or sub-account. The assets of the Legacy Fund shall be invested as provided by law. Interest and earnings accruing from each account or sub-account shall be credited to that account or sub-account. The Forest Recreation Account is established as an account within the Legacy Fund. The Forest Recreation Account shall consist of revenue derived from concessions, leases, contracts, and fees from recreational activities on state forest lands, and other revenues as authorized by law. Money in the Forest Recreation Account shall be expended only for the following: A. The development, improvement, operation, promotion, and maintenance of forest recreation activities. B. Grants to state colleges and universities to implement programs funded by the Forest Recreation Account. C. The administration of the Forest Recreation Account. The Game and Fish Protection Account is established as an account within the Legacy Fund. The Game and Fish Protection Account shall consist of revenue derived from hunting and fishing licenses, passbooks, permits, fees, concessions, leases, contracts, and activities, damages paid for the illegal taking of game and fish, revenue derived from fees, licenses, and permits related to game, game areas, and game fish, and other revenues as authorized by law. Money in the Game and Fish Protection Account shall be expended only for the following: A. The development, improvement, operation, promotion, and maintenance of wildlife and fisheries programs and facilities. B. The acquisition of land and rights in land that support wildlife and fisheries programs. C. Research to support wildlife and fishery programs. D. The enforcement and administration of the wildlife and fisheries laws of the state, including the necessary equipment and apparatus incident to the operation and enforcement of wildlife and fisheries laws. E. The protection, propagation, distribution, and control of wildlife and fish. E. The protection, propagation, distribution, and control of wildlife and fish. F. Grants to state colleges and universities to implement programs funded by the Game and Fish Protection Account. G. The administration of the Game and Fish Protection Account, which may include payments in lieu of taxes on state-owned land that has been or will be purchased through the Game and Fish Protection Fund or account. The Off-Road Vehicle Account is established as an account within the Legacy Fund. The off-road vehicle account shall consist of revenue derived from fees imposed upon the use or registration of off-road vehicles and other revenues as authorized by law. Money in the off-road vehicle account shall be expended only for the following: A. Signage for and the improvement, maintenance, and construction of off-road vehicle trails, routes, or areas. B. The administration and enforcement of state regulations related to off-road vehicles. C. The leasing of land for use by off-road vehicles. D. The acquisition of easements, permits, or other agreements for the use of land for off-road vehicle trails, routes, or areas. E. The restoration of any of the natural resources of the state on public land that are damaged due to off-road vehicle use. F. Safety education programs related to the operation of off-road vehicles. G. Other uses as provided by law, as long as the uses are consistent with the development, improvement, operation, promotion, and maintenance of state's off-road vehicle programs. H. Grants to state colleges and universities to implement programs funded by the Off-Road Vehicle Account. I. The administration of the Off-Road Vehicle Account. The Recreation Improvement Account is established as an account within the Legacy Fund. The Recreation Improvement Account shall consist of all tax revenue derived from the sale of 2% of the gasoline sold in the state for consumption in internal combustion engines and other revenues as authorized by law. Money in the Recreation Improvement Account shall be distributed as follows. A. 80% of the money shall be annually transferred to the Waterways account to be used for the purposes of that account. B. 14% of the money shall be annually transferred to the snowmobile account to be used for the purposes of that account. C. The remainder of the money that is not transferred under this section shall be used upon appropriation for recreation projects, including grants to state colleges and universities to implement recreation projects, and for the administration of the Recreation Improvement Account, of the amount that is credited to recreational projects in a fiscal year, not less than 25% of any funds designated for projects intended for off-road vehicles shall be expended on projects to repair damages as a result of pollution, impairment, or destruction of air, water, or other natural resources, or the public trust in air, water, or other natural resources as a result of those off-road vehicles. The snowmobile account is established as an account within the Legacy Fund. The snowmobile account shall consist of revenue derived from fees imposed for the registration or use of snowmobiles, revenue derived from the use of snowmobile trails, transfers from the Recreation Improvement Account, and other revenues as authorized by law. Money in the snowmobile account shall be expended only for the following. A. Planning, construction, maintenance, and acquisition of trails and areas for the use of snowmobiles. B. Providing access to trails and areas for the use of snowmobiles. C. Providing basic snowmobile facilities. D. The administration and enforcement of state regulations related to snowmobiles. E. Safety education programs related to the operation of snowmobiles. F. Other uses as provided by law, as long as the uses are consistent with the development, improvement, operation, promotion, and maintenance of the state's snowmobile programs. G. Grants to state colleges and universities to implement programs funded by the snowmobile account. H. The administration of the snowmobile account, which may include payments in lieu of taxes on state-owned land that has been or will be purchased through the Recreational Snowmobile Trail Improvement Fund, or snowmobile account. The State Park Improvement Account is established as an account within the Legacy Fund. The State Park Improvement Account shall consist of revenue derived from concessions, leases, contracts, fees, and permits for activities in state parks and recreation areas, damages paid to the state for illegal activities in state parks and recreation areas, and other revenues as provided by law. Money in the State Park Improvement Account shall be expended only for the following. A. The development, improvement, operation, promotion, and maintenance of state parks and recreation areas. B. Grants to state colleges and universities to implement programs funded by the State Park Improvement Account. C. The administration of the State Park Improvement Account. The Waterways account is established as an account within the Legacy Fund. The Waterways account shall consist of revenue derived from watercraft registration fees assessed on the ownership or operation of watercraft in the state, revenue derived from fees charged for the moorage of watercraft at state-operated mooring facilities, revenue derived from fees charged for the use of state-operated public access sites, transfers from the Recreation Improvement Account, all tax revenue derived from the sale of diesel fuel in the state that is used to generate power for the operation or propulsion of vessels on the waterways of the state, and other revenues as authorized by law. Money in the Waterways account shall be expended only for the following. A. The construction, operation, and maintenance of recreational boating facilities that provide public access to waterways or moorage of watercraft. B. The acquisition of property for the purpose of paragraph A. C. Grants to local units of government and state colleges and universities for the provision of public access or moorage of watercraft and law enforcement or boating education to recreational watercraft operators. D. The acquisition and development of harbors and public access sites. E. The enforcement of laws related to the operation of watercraft and education related to the operation of watercraft. Not less than 49% of revenues from watercraft registration fees received by the Waterways account shall be used for the purposes of this subdivision. F. The administration of programs funded by the Waterways account. G. Other uses as provided by law, as long as the uses are consistent with the development, improvement, operation, promotion, and maintenance of the state's waterways programs. H. The administration of the Waterways account, which may include payments in lieu of taxes on state-owned land that has been or will be purchased through the Michigan State Waterways Fund or Waterways account. The legislature shall provide by law for the implementation of this section. Section 41. The Michigan Game and Fish Protection Trust Fund is established. The Michigan Game and Fish Protection Trust Fund shall consist of revenue derived from bonuses, rentals, delayed rentals, royalties, and other revenues collected or reserved by the state under leases or direct sale contracts accruing from state-owned lands acquired with money from state or federal game and fish protection funds, or revenues accruing from lands purchased with such revenues. The Michigan Game and Fish Protection Trust Fund may also receive gifts, grants, bequests, or assets from any source and may receive other revenues as authorized by law. The assets of the Michigan Game and Fish Protection Trust Fund shall be invested as provided by law. The interest and earnings from these investments shall be credited to the Michigan Game and Fish Protection Trust Fund. The accumulated interest and earnings of the Michigan Game and Fish Protection Trust Fund, and not more than $6 million of the principal of the Michigan Game and Fish Protection Trust Fund, may be expended in any year for the purposes of the Game and Fish Protection Account of the Michigan Conservation and Recreation Legacy Fund established in Section 40. The legislature shall provide by law the implementation of this section. Section 42. The Michigan Non-Game Fish and Wildlife Trust Fund is established. The Michigan Non-Game Fish and Wildlife Trust Fund shall consist of revenue designated by a member of the public for the benefit of non-game fish and wildlife. The Michigan Non-Game Fish and Wildlife Trust Fund may also receive gifts, grants, bequests, or assets from any source, and may receive other revenues as authorized by law. The assets of the Michigan Non-Game Fish and Wildlife Trust Fund shall be invested as provided by law. The interest and earnings from these investments shall be credited to the Michigan Non-Game Fish and Wildlife Trust Fund. The Michigan Non-Game Fish and Wildlife Trust Fund shall maintain a principal balance of not less than $6 million. The interest and earnings of the Michigan Non-Game Fish and Wildlife Trust Fund and other revenues not retained on a permanent basis shall be expended only for the following. A. The management of non-game fish and wildlife species, consistent with a long-range plan for the management of Michigan's non-game fish and wildlife resources. B. Grants to state colleges and universities to implement programs funded by the Michigan Non-Game Fish and Wildlife Trust Fund. C. The administration of the Michigan Non-Game Fish and Wildlife Trust Fund.